Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Hello and welcome to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson. I've entitled this Vacation Inspiration. Last week, I was in Hawaii and I was there for a few days. I was there attending a wedding. And for me, vacations have this sort of effect on me. I take the time off from work and I go do whatever it is that I do. Let's say it's one of those where I stay home. And probably like a lot of people, you don't really take a vacation because when you're at home, there are chores and things you still feel connected to because you're still at home. And everything that you don't get around to doing your normal day, you do it while you're on vacation just because you see it. So that's why when you take a vacation away from home, it's supposed to be one of those where you can really relax, at least for me. Some people like to take a vacation and the minute they land, they want to be off doing lots of things. Well, for me, I tend to take a few days to just kind of settle in. I mean, it could be 2 or 3 days of the vacation. I settle in, kind of get relaxed, and then start to meander and see things. Well, my trip to Hawaii, it was kind of like my fourth one in a number of years. So the place isn't unfamiliar to me, but it's just the idea that I actually left home, went somewhere else, and started taking in what was there. So what I got to thinking about, now this is kind of like my philosophy. I'm thinking I have needed a vacation for a long time where I didn't just do anything other than just relax. Well, what came about was I was getting closer to the end of my time to return, and I got to thinking about, okay, why did I come here? I mean, obviously I came there for the wedding, which was a wonderful ceremony. I was out on the beach, and I took lots of pretty pictures, was part of the wedding party. I mean, I loved it. And I got to thinking about what's the next thing for me to do? Well, I decided to go surfing, my first time out. And anytime you do something that you've never done before, and that's a real important thing that I'm going to come back to, but anytime you do something that you've never done before, it's probably good to get some sort of instruction. Get a coach. I don't know if you can read a book and learn how to do something, whatever it is, pick. But in this particular case, I went over to a surf shop, which is very close to the place that I was staying, and hired an instructor to go out on the water with me and teach me some of the basics. Now, we were in the shop, learned a few things, getting up on the board. Those people who surf would know exactly what this is about. But remember, this is a first-time thing for me. But I didn't even know it was on a bucket list, but I guess it was because I now get to check that one off. But I have pretty good balance. If you can ride a skateboard, you can do things like that. You can probably handle a surfboard fairly well. So anyhow, hire the instructor because at this point, like I said, I know that I'm new at this, and in order to prevent things from going wrong really fast, I'm protected. So we get out on the water, and we start practicing some of the things that he had coached me on when I was there in the shop. Now, what I can tell you is, I fell off the surfboard several times before I finally got up on it and rode the thing. Now, I did get a number of waves in which I was able to ride the thing a long way, and I'm talking my coach was happy. And if he's smiling, then that means it must be good, right? But I'm talking about the vacation inspiration thing in the sense that when I thought about why the surf thing was important to me, and this could be anything in life for you. There are a number of things that I've done many times. And like I said, this trip to Hawaii wasn't my first. And I think when we go to different places, quite often we wind up doing something that we're real familiar with. I mean, we go to restaurants. I mean, we're used to that, or because so all of that's familiar. But when you take up an activity of something that you've never done before, I'm talking the first time you've done it, and this is why the surfing experience was so significant for me, because this was the first new thing that I've done in a long time. In fact, I couldn't remember the last time I did something that was practically brand spanking new. Now, the inspiration part, and this is what I want to share with you, the listener, is look for something for yourself in the same way. Find something that you've never done, that you've thought about doing, or maybe you didn't think about it. Like I said, I didn't even realize the surf thing was on my bucket list, but I'll just say it was, and it's checked off. But it's the goosebumps, it's the emotional lift, it's all that mental stuff that you get, all that juice that you get when you do something and you accomplish your goal. Now, my goal was to get out there and surf. I'm not an expert at it by any shape, but it is something that I did, and I will go and do it again. Wherever I go that there's a beach and I can get in the water and have a ball, I'm going to try it. So I get to add that to my personal list of things that I've accomplished. And it's a small thing, but again, it's the emotional lift you get by trying on something yourself. Now, I know it's exciting to watch people do things that you've never seen somebody else do. We watch entertainers do things. They're phenomenal, whether they're actors or musicians, and it's one thing to partake in an experience when you're watching someone, but when you are the someone and it's happening for you, I think you can get a lot out of that because you carry that experience with you, that thrill, that happiness, that lift, and it changes your outlook. And I think ultimately that's the point about the inspiration. It changes your outlook. I think it opens your perspective to try other new things. And if there's things out there that you have thought about, and maybe you got close to the edge and then pulled back from it because there was maybe scheduling or some sort of fear, something happened that pulled you back from the edge, just from the brink of jumping off and doing it, whatever it is. I would encourage you to revisit that and make it happen for you, whatever it is. Because I think when we take on those kinds of things and go beyond where we've been before, like I said, it gives you the knowledge that you can accomplish things. And this is a very personal thing for me, if just because it's nice to be able to do something that you expect yourself to be able to do, because we have expectations and you want to do things well. But when it's something totally new, see, we don't have control over that. Even our thought of how well we're going to do, we don't really have control over that. We'd like to think that we're going to be successful at least, have some modicum of success. But when you don't know you're going to be good at it, sometimes you have fear, either because you think, well, I might look stupid. Put that aside. Take the challenge for yourself. And I think you can also have the chance to learn something new. Number one, that you can take on a challenge and be successful, or whatever your measure of success is. And in my particular case, my measure of success was actually staying up on the board the surfboard and riding that wave and feeling that wind in my face while I'm riding the board. Now, let's say if I didn't do it very well, then I might have changed the model of success for me to have said, okay, I actually tried something new. And so we can look at it lots of different ways. But I think as you take on challenges in life, you find that the more new experiences you have, then the more interesting life is. I'm going to take a break, and I'll be right back.
The GSMC Sex Podcast is a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet. Download the GSMC Sex Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you can find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hello, and we're back to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. And I'm talking about vacation inspiration. Now, when I ended that last segment, one of the things that I said is, taking on new experiences makes life interesting. I mean, that may sound really obvious to a lot of people. But if you think about why people don't try new things, and it's to that part of the conversation is why I made the statement. A lot of people don't try new things because of fear. That's it, cut and dried. Now, where does that fear come from? It could be how you were raised. We're raised to be very cautious. We want to be safe. We don't want to get hurt. We don't want, those kinds of things. And it's, the people that were around us at the time who were trying to keep us safe. So we grow up hearing all kinds of things. Now, to our benefit, people are looking out for us. But there's also the experience that we are taking on somebody else's stuff. Maybe something happened to this person who is to be our protector, and they are being really cautious. I mean, it can't protect you from everything. And because of guilt and all kinds of things, people can become very protective and not even allow someone to experience anything. And for that reason, we grow up with all of these fears, all of these voices, all of these things telling us not to do stuff. And that can be a very, very powerful reason why we don't try new things. Now, it's amazing when you think about how many things we do in a day, and at some point, these were all new. Somewhere in our history, there was a beginning. And then we sort of reach a plateau where we are repeating things that we've done before. Now, that familiarity makes some things that we do, which are very practical for us, it makes us efficient. So we do things that we are already experienced at doing, and we get better and better and better at it, to where we're just on autopilot. And there are definitely times in life where this is where you want to be. Walking, for example. You don't have to think about it. You just do it. Writing your name. You don't have to think about it. You just do it. See, there are lots of examples in life where that sort of familiarity with what we do really is to our benefit. And then when you think about the concept of consciously taking on a new activity. Some people don't think about it in terms of, am I keeping myself from doing something else? Because we may operate in that place of, we have our routine. We get up, we go to the job by, driving, bus, ride a bike, whatever it is, however we get there, we do the job, day's over, and we come back home. And what do? We probably feed ourselves, you may take a shower, and prepare yourself for bed. And as long as we do that and we're happy, and we're safe, we have a routine, and we tend to stick to that. It's only when we are enlightened or inspired in some way to take on something outside of that routine that we tend to start feeling maybe a little uncomfortable because it is outside of our routine that we've become very efficient at doing in a very, very significant way to us. I mean, if you can imagine what happens to some people is they have their routine and watch somebody come in and make a suggestion about doing something a little different. Some people don't like having their routine disturbed. And it has to do with control. It has to do with, okay, I like things the way they are. And sometimes people operate that same way with their entire life. So introducing new things can really be a challenge. Now, as I started to say that you can be inspired to get outside of your comfort zone and allow new things to happen, and you never know. It could be a great experience or it may not. And I think the fear that it may not be as satisfying as what we know our life to already be is what really keeps a lot of people from trying it, from trying new experiences, and sometimes from even thinking about it. I mean, we can get really busy at our lives and not just realize that time is just clicking away, and we're just sort of going along for the ride, so to speak. And you can do that for a long, long time. Look at people around you. How many people do you know that try something new and different? And of those that do, sometimes they'll come back and, they'll share that experience with you in an enlightening way. I mean, not in the bragging way, but I'm talking about a way that really shows that they enjoyed themselves. And sometimes in those experiences, they can tell you about some harrowing things that happen that might be a little scary. Maybe you could relate to that part. Because remember when I was talking about, for a lot of us when we're really young and people are there to protect us, to keep us from getting hurt, because they certainly don't want to hear us cry and have to put Band-Aids on us and things, because it makes them seem like maybe they were a bad protector, a bad parent, or whoever was supposed to be in charge of us. But we got to understand that these things happen in life. And we have bumps and scrapes. And sometimes it's actually more the mental, emotional kind. I mean, we don't necessarily see those scars. We see the ones when we fall down. Those are real visible. But the ones that are on the inside are not so. And sometimes we give ourselves scars because we don't venture out of our comfort zone. And I think when you get in the space where you're willing to take some risks, albeit calculated, but when you're willing to take some risk, you can heal a lot of those emotional scars. Being brave, it's not easy, especially when you have grown to fear so much. It is not easy getting outside of your comfort zone. And for those that have done it on their own, I applaud you. I'm going to talk about the inspiration to get outside of your comfort zone and when I come back from the break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello and welcome back to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson, and I'm talking about vacation inspiration. I had the occasion on my last vacation to go surfing. I didn't even realize it was on my bucket list. It's just an opportunity came up. I was inspired, had a couple of conversations with people who were on the island. I was there while I was there in Hawaii, and I decided to give it a go. And I had a blast. When I left off in the last segment, I was talking about getting outside of your comfort zone, how we do that. It's not something that a lot of people do just on their own. There's usually some catalyst somewhere. Something inspires you, or you might even have a bit of amnesia. You might even forget why you were ever afraid of something. But in the interest of those who know that they have a fear, and how do you practice getting around those things that just seem at times to just paralyze you from making a decision? In the example that I'm giving you an illustration of is me going surfing. Now, I didn't have any fear of going surfing per se. I realized I was out of my element because it was something that I had never done, and that in and of itself can bring about a lot of anxiety. But I'm fairly athletic and thought I could handle it. But I did the thing that helped me get over the hump, and I hired a guy who was an instructor in surfing. I mean, bona fide. I mean, this guy had surfed most of his life. So he went out, got me out there on the board, and I surfed. Yeah, I fell off a few times, but that's all part of it. Hey, I landed in the water, right? The water's soft. But again, back to how you get beyond those things that block you from having success. The fear. One of the ways in which we can get beyond it, I think, is to find someone who's been successful at it. Find somebody who has done it well and get them to teach you. That's one way. Because that kind of helps you ease into it, ease into the experience. Just talking about it, and you see the enthusiasm from someone who has experienced it well. See, if you talk to people who are afraid all the time, you're going to get that fear. You're going to be part of their conversation. So if you want to have fun at something, talk to people who have fun at whatever it is that you're interested in. And you're going to feel that energy. You're going to feel that inspiration. They're going to encourage you. That's a way to do it. For me, it was the surfboard thing. For you, maybe it's cycling. Maybe it's jogging. Maybe it's roller skating, roller blading, whatever. It could be art. It doesn't have to necessarily be a physical activity, but just getting over the hump of doing something that you've been holding yourself back from. So putting yourself in conversation with people who enjoy it, I think that is a wonderful way. And it offers you the opportunity to be around a different community. I think what we see over time, that success in things generally happens because you are in those places where, number one, your mind is open to the possibility. And how do we get there? Thinking about it, visualizing the fact that you're going to be successful. And when I talk about success, I mean, the measure of success for me, and there are a number of things, one of which, and I hadn't even thought about it before I went surfing, but one of the measures of success that I was using on that particular day was being up on that surfboard and surfing. Not just falling in the water, but actually being out there on the surfboard and doing the surf thing. But then I broke it down to something even smaller than that. And it was the idea that I actually made the decision to go and do it. Now, I don't remember having any fear of surfing. I just remember that I hadn't done it before. And I wanted to have an experience of doing something that I had never done before. So I get to own that. It actually happened. It's going to be my story. It won't be me telling somebody else's stories about what they did. Because I think we all know somebody who tends to be a storyteller, meaning they're great at it, but they're telling somebody else's stories. They're not telling their own. They're not telling about their life that they've lived. And that's great. I can give you a number of people that do that. People that are spectators that watch sports. They can tell you about a lot of things that happened out there on the ball field. They were there. But what's more exciting is the people that were actually out there doing it. Those are the ones who can really own that experience because they made it happen. However big or small, they were on the field or they were on the court. And this is where I would like you to see yourself, not being a spectator in the stands, but actually being out there on the court doing your life. That's where you're really going to get the most juice. Because as you do things and experience them, see, we're not even talking about how good you are. It's not even that if you don't think that you're a certain level of proficiency, whether you failed, that's not it. We're just getting you out there and participating in your life in a way that's different than you've done it before. And that's really where, when I started to break this down for myself, where it made a difference. So now I can take that same example, my own example for myself, and apply it to other things. Some that I haven't even thought of yet. But it also gives me the confidence or the reinforcement to know that I actually can do this. Because I think what we lack oftentimes is the confidence in ourselves that we can do anything we put our minds to. I think we hear that oftentimes, and it sounds great. It really sounds like a wonderful thing. But when it comes to actually doing it, making a choice to do something, apply yourself to it, whatever the outcome is going to be, and enjoying the experience. And then if you have some sort of success around it, like I did, you get to own that too. I mean, I own the times that I fell off the board. And yeah, it was a real public way. There are other people out there trying it as well. I mean, the ocean is a pretty big place when you want to go surfing. So there was lots of room to practice. And I was glad that I was able to enjoy what I did in my first lesson. Now, I give credit to my coach. But I also give credit to myself for going out there and participating in my own life, not being a spectator. And I did it on my vacation. So now I'm inspired to take more vacations. I need to do that for myself. And however it works out for you, that you can find something that will move you out of the stands and onto the court or field of your life, do it. Find something. Embrace it. Fear holds you back more often than you know. And when you actually get out there and do it, you'll wonder, why was I keeping myself from this? I'm John Johnson, and this is the Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.